Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, and welcome back to the channel for another Smite 2 update video. We've got a couple of patches to go over here. There was one released on the 1st of November and one on the 4th, and I haven't been covering these as they came out because I've been on vacation over the weekend from like Friday to Monday. And so unfortunately, I've not been able to keep you guys posted on these like as they came out, but I know a lot of you do watch my channel as like your pretty much only source for like Smite update news and stuff like that, so I thought I would cover them anyway in case you guys haven't seen them. We'll be covering the November 1st patch first, so if you don't want to check this out, if you've already seen it or whatever, you can skip to this time in the video. We'll be covering the more recent patch. But I thought I would go over both of them just in case you guys haven't seen them or you want to hear my thoughts on them and whatnot. So let's just jump right in. So first up, for Bacchus, they have fixed an issue where the ability was not knocking back minions for Belch of the Gods. So this was, I believe, actually intended. I think this was a change they made for Smite 2. They did a similar thing for Hades with his 1. And there was some feedback on this in the Ambassador Discord. Basically, Hades is keeping the change because it's more annoying when it like knocks back minions and they're out of range of your 3 or whatever. But Bacchus kind of needs that knockback on his 3 to like group up the whole wave and then press your 2 on all 6 of them. So the Bacchus changes are getting reverted back to how it is in Smite 1, where it does indeed knock back minions. Fenrir, they have fixed an issue where he was not getting full runes on killing an enemy god, which is good. And for his 1, they have fixed an issue where unintended cases where it would stun when it wasn't meant to, and vice versa. So yeah, I guess if you were full runes, it wasn't stunning sometimes, and if you weren't full runes, it was. So that's good. For Conquest, the Ancient Fury, they have increased the tower debuff duration from 120 to 180 seconds, so 2 minutes to 3 minutes on that. I think this is fine. Ancient Fury, when they made the change where it basically becomes like an Emperor's armor for the front structure in every lane, is definitely nowhere near as valuable as it used to be, where it literally disabled every single structure. And honestly, I'd be fine with them also buffing up the power level of the effect, because as I said, right now it's basically just an Emperor's armor, and it could probably be a little bit more powerful. But yeah, it is at least going to last a little bit longer now. Fire Giant, they have reduced the base health from 6750 to 5400, and also the base protections from 60 to 48. So that should just help her with your early Fire Giant takes if it was a little tanky. It was quite hard to kill at like the first spawn. So general change, all gods have had their per level health increased by 15%. So this is an interesting change. There has been a lot of complaints about Smite 2 recently in terms of like the meta is a little too bursty, especially in regards to CC. It can sometimes feel like you get CC'd once or twice and you just get blown up instantly. So I guess this is why they're making this change. Not going to affect level 1, and also not going to affect like any base health or base protections or protections per level. So it's not going to be anywhere near as much of a change as like, for example, 9.5 was in Smite 1. The game is still going to be substantially more bursty than that, but it's just going to be a little bit less so, especially as you get those levels online. Amaterasu getting some nerfs, justifiably so. She is the best solo laner in the game after Sobek, in my opinion. So they have decreased the intelligence buff on her 1 from 16 to 50 plus 5% int. It's now going to be 18 to 34 plus 3% int. And I think this makes sense. This is honestly a large sleeper part of why Amaterasu does so much damage at the moment. You just build a little bit of int in your build, and because this is an int buff that scales off of your int, like having just a little bit in your build makes this buff give you even more, and it just becomes kind of insane. Heavenly Reflection, they have decreased the damage scaling from 60 strength 85 int to 60 strength 60 int, so just taking off 25% int scaling from her 2, which is absolutely massive, but probably justified. This ability absolutely chunks. If you've ever played into an Amaterasu, which you probably have if you've been playing Smite 2 recently, she's very popular and very strong. This ability just absolutely chunks way too much, so definitely good to see the int scaling taken down on this a little bit. And they have also increased the cooldown by 2 seconds as well, so that should just be up a little bit less often. And finally for armor, the ultimate, they have decreased the damage scaling from 50 strength 45 int to 45 strength 35 int. So again, hitting the int scaling a little bit harder on this. It is an ability that is incredibly powerful, you know, where they added the AoE stun and stuff like that. You don't honestly need it doing this much damage, and that's just generally these Amaterasu nerfs. They're not really hitting like her mobility, her sustainability, her team fight, CC and stuff like that, because that's kind of what defines her. But they are hitting just her damage because it was way too high. She was doing like almost as much damage as like junglers and stuff. It was kind of insane. Chuck is getting some buffs, so they have given him the base attack speed change that they gave to a lot of gods a while ago. They have increased the duration of the torrent buff by 1 second and rain dance 2 seconds off the cooldown. And I think this is fine. Chuck in like the early days of Smite 2, we saw him a little bit, you know, even the jungle a little bit, but also in Chuck solo. But honestly, he's just fallen off substantially as more prevalent solo laners have been added. You know, Mordred, Amaterasu, Sobek, Hercules. There's just a lot of solo laners that just Chuck cannot compete with, so getting some buffs is fine, I think. Fenrir, Brutalize, they have decreased the damage from 40 to 160 plus 50%. It's now 40 to 140 plus 45%, and they have also increased the cooldown by 1 second. And I think this is fine. Brutalize is absolutely chunking at the moment in Smite Smite 2, but you don't necessarily want to over nerf this ability too much, because we've already seen it a little bit in that like some gods that can really just kind of counter this very easily, like Amaterasu or Hercules, are now being added. And as we get more gods, especially mid laners, you know, we've got stuff like Kukulkan and Ra and stuff in mid that just really can't deal with this ability. But as we get more mid laners that have leaps or teleports or easy access stuns that can just stop this ability, it's going to become a lot less powerful. It's just kind of like the current roster of Smite can't deal with Brutalize super well, but I do think some small nerfs are justified for it, but you don't necessarily want to over nerf this ability. But for the ultimate, they have finally fixed the insta-bite interaction with Fenrir's ultimate. This is now going to match the bite timing from Smite 1, where there's a small delay. You have to go like basically to full size before you can start biting people, which is really good. This was a large part of why this ability was so frustrating to deal with. The other part of it is that it's kind of hard to justify going beads sometimes in Smite 2 on squishies. You might want to get Aegis, you might want to get Shell, you might want to get something else. And if you're relying on your support with like the beads active or whatever, which is very popular, it's going to be a little bit harder for them to react to like an instant bite as it is to like, you know, if they see the Fenrir like growing up and going for you, they can react a lot faster with their beads for you. So this is really good. This was a super frustrating interaction. Very glad it's fixed. Hades getting some buffs, so they have increased the damage scaling on his 1 by 5%, and also the cooldown now scales down 14 down to 12 instead of 14 at all ranks. Shroud of Darkness, the silence and fear durations, you now need less protections, 150 down to 125 now to get the bonus duration scaling on those. And Devour Souls, they have shifted the healing scaling from 10% prots to 7.5 int and 7.5 prots. And I think this is good as well. You often build a lot of int on Hades, even if you're playing him in solo lane, so this is definitely going to be a benefit for him. And yeah, Hades, a similar situation to Chak, I would say. You know, he seemed fairly strong on his initial release in like the early days of Smite 2, but there's just been so many, or like OP as hell solo laners that have been added, like Sobek, Amaterasu, Hercules, that just Hades can't really compete anymore, so I think him getting some buffs is justified. Kukulkan, they have adjusted the deployment time of his 3 to match Smite 1, which is really good. They did make a change in Smite 1 a little while back where it deploys faster, and probably they were using the previous deployment time from Smite 1 in Smite 2, so it felt a little bit weird. And Kukulkan is now able to fire his dash version of Slipstream while the ability is deploying, so you're going to be able to just instantly 3 and 2 without having to wait for it to actually come down, which is good for his safety. Moving on to item changes though, so first up, the piercing effect, which is like the Totem of Death Demonic Grip Executioner, where you stack up percent pen. That is getting a nerf. They have decreased the pen per stack from 10 to 7.5, but increased the stack count from 3 to 4, so still the same total amount of pen. It's still going to be 30% in total, but you're just going to have to work a little bit more, stack it up a little bit more to get the full value. Shattering is also being added as a new effect, and basically what they're doing is Obsidian Shard and Titan's Bane are no longer going to stack with each other. They'll still get the same 20% pen, but it just doesn't stack. So you can get one instance of Shattering, you can't get multiple. And along with some other changes further down here, basically these changes are just aimed at like deleting the insane percent pen stacking build that was being experimented with in like the last week or so of Smite 2, where you just stack up like 70, 80, even 90% pen, and you just end up dealing basically true damage to everyone, including tanks. It was very silly, and so I think this is a good change to remedy that. So a few items down here, they are basically removing the penetration and giving them buffs in other areas. So here's in Vitalis, 250 gold cost reduction, remove the pen and added 5% attack speed. Totem of Death, 100 gold cost increase, remove the pen, added 20 intelligence and decreased the cooldown rate by 5. Soul Reaver, they have removed the penetration, increased the int by 20, the mana by 150, and the mana regen by 3. And Serrated Edge, they have removed the pen and increased the strength by 20. So yeah, all of these items, they're just trying to remove a little bit of penetration from the game. It was a little bit too easy to access insanely high amounts of penetration. But of course, they're buffing these items up generally in other areas like their cost or their attack speed or their mana or whatever. Berserker Shield is getting a shift, so a 500 gold cost reduction, which is kind of nuts. This is going to be a lot more attractive as like a rush in lane now. You don't have to pay 2,800 gold for your first item anymore. But they have straight up removed the physical protection, added 50 health, and increased the passive physical protection from Berserk mode from 20 to 30 now. Gladiator Shield, they have decreased the physical procs by 5, but added 150 health, which is definitely a change in Gladiator Shield's favor. We weren't seeing this item all too much. I still picked it up occasionally on like 4 damaging ability solo laners like Mordred and stuff, but this is definitely a buff for the item. Divine Ruin, they have removed the mana and mana regen, but added 5% pen. So this is basically to bring it in line with Brawler's Beatstick. These items are literally mirrors of each other on the strength and inside of the spectrum, and Brawlers had 5% pen and Divine Ruin didn't, which was kind of weird. Breastplate of Valor, they have increased the passive threshold to get the CDR from 400 plus 20 per level of health to 500 plus 25 per level instead. Genji's Guard getting a similar kind of change, basically just reducing the amount of like free cooldown that you can get from it. They've increased the passive cooldown on that from 30 to 45 seconds. And yeah, these two items sort of went hand in hand. A lot of solo laners were building these, Mordred, Amaterasu, Sobek, Hercules. Basically, these were just like go-tos for solo laners because CDR is so strong in the game right now. Speaking of, Spear of Desolation and Jotun's Revenge are getting nerfs to their passives as well. So Spear of Deso is going from 2 seconds basic and 6 seconds ultimate to 1 second basic and 5 second ultimate, and Jotun's is going from 2 second basic and 6 second ultimate to 1 second basic and 6 second ultimate. I don't know why these are mismatched. I feel like they should just be the same. Either make it 5 or make it 6. I don't really know, but yeah, they're just getting small nerfs to their passives there. And finally, Conduit Gem is getting an increase to its passive damage from 2 to 3 per stack, just to kind of help it compete with stuff like Sands of Time and Bluestone for the gods that use it. But yeah, that is the 1st of November patch. You may have already been aware of that one if you've been following the patch notes and stuff. It's been out for a few days now. But let's move on to the patch that came out yesterday, the 4th of November patch. It's still a little bit of a smaller one, but it still has some important bug fixes and some big balance changes and stuff. So first up, general bug fixes. They have fixed an issue with all gods being locked in the match lobby, which is good. Amaterasu, they have fixed an issue where her basic attack chain did not do proper damage on all hits. They're not specifying here. I don't know if this is a buff or a nerf or whatever, but that should be fixed. And her ultimate, they have fixed an issue where the ability misses smaller gods at point blank range. I've not really played too much on her, to be honest, so I haven't experienced this, but that's definitely good. Danzaburo, with his passive, they have fixed an issue where the description did not properly indicate how much bonus damage the clones were taking, so that's good as well. The Morrigan, they have fixed the cast mode of her ultimate setting in gameplay being overridden from global, so your specific god setting for Morrigan's ultimate should now apply rather than your global setting. Sol, they have fixed her 3 destroying Danzaburo's money bags, which is a pretty funny one. And Death's Toll and Death's Embrace, they have fixed an issue where these items were proccing on structures, which is good as well. Moving into god balance though, so first up, Hecate is getting a buff. They have decreased the cooldown of her 1 from 9 at all ranks. It's now 9 scaling down to 7. So when she was initially released, this was a 7-second base cooldown flat. They did nerf it to 9 seconds, but now they're going to allow it to scale down to 7 seconds in the late game. And I think this is probably fine. Hecate is really strong, but she only really shows up in like a high communication, high level of play lobbies. Like in low communication and sort of like low to mid end lobbies, she really doesn't do that well. And so I think this change is probably fine. I don't think it's going to break pro play or anything, and she's really honestly not doing that well in like low level play. Loki is finally getting some nerfs. I feel like he's mostly escaped. He's been like one of the sort of like more top tier gods that really has escaped nerfs. He's definitely one of the better junglers in the game, if not the best. Vanish, they have decreased the damage from 35 to 95 plus 20% strength to 30 to 90 plus 15% strength. So just 5 base damage and 5% strength off all ticks of Vanish, which is, I believe it ticks 4 times. So that's pretty impactful. 20 base damage, 20% strength scaling off of that ability. And Loki's 2, they have increased the cooldown from 12 to 13 seconds as well. So just a little bit less free to just run up and 2 people on cooldown with this. Proc all your Bluestones and Reavers and Heartseekers and Crushers. And should probably affect his jungle clear a little bit as well. Ra is getting some buffs, which I think makes sense. He's definitely one of the more underperforming releases we've had in Smite 2 so far, I would say. Obviously nothing compared to Sobek, but generally I feel like he is a little bit underpowered. So Divine Light, they have increased the base damage by 10 at all ranks and the int scaling by 10%. And Solar Blessing, they have increased the int scaling by 5% per tick on that as well. Sobek getting some nerfs, which as I alluded to just now, definitely justified. Sobek is probably the best god in the game at the moment. So the cooldown reduction on Sickening Strike is now only granted when hitting gods, which is going to be an absolutely massive change. This is a small amount of text, but it's going to be really, really important for Sobek's oppression in the laning phase. You know, Sobek's laning phase in Smite 1 has never been like super good, really. He just kind of like holds his own. He's very hard to beat in lane, but he also doesn't really win any matchups like super hard. But in Smite 2, with this cooldown reduction and with it being able to spread to people and stuff like that, this ability just became absolutely insane. It was like a 5-second base cooldown or something stupid if you were getting the full cooldown reduction from this. And so yeah, this is really, really going to hurt his wave clear and his laning phase poke and stuff like that. It's going to be a massive change. And looking at the waters, they have also increased the cooldown by 10 seconds as well, which definitely makes sense. This ability just does so much now. You know, it's long duration CC immunity, a really impactful slow, tons of damage, mana regeneration, it's an execute. Like, this should not be on a base 90-second cooldown in my opinion anyway, so I think 100 seconds is good for this. And finally, for god balance, Zeus is getting a small nerf to Chain Lightning. They have decreased the base damage from 80 to 280 plus 80%. It's now going to be 80 to 260 plus 70%. So mainly towards the late game, this is going to be losing a bit of damage. Zeus might need more than this, to be honest. It could be a skill issue, but he's been completely destroying all of my games, dude. Like, obviously, more communication and better players means Zeus is a worse god because it's much easier to kind of dive on him, abuse his lack of CC immunity and mobility, and just kind of like shut him out of the game. And so in high communication lobbies where you can coordinate and shut him down, he's probably not anywhere near as good. But in my solo queue games, he's been completely destroying, dude. So Zeus may need more nerfs. We'll see, maybe in CA6. But moving on to item balance, Avatar's Parachute and Dreamer's Idol, they have decreased the active cooldowns on these from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. And this is fine. These items never get used, honestly. The only time I've used these is for funny maximum size Hercules builds. And because they never get used, if you're unaware of what these do, they give you a 20% int or strength boost, respectively, and make you bigger. Berserker's Shield, they have increased the buff duration on the passive from 5 seconds to 8 and decreased the passive cooldown from 15 seconds to 8 as well. So yeah, basically this is going to be permanently up now as long as you're below the threshold to go berserk. I can't remember what that is in Smite 2. It might be 30-40% health or something like that. But yeah, basically if you're below that threshold, you're now going to be permanently getting the protections and attack speed I think this gives in Smite 2. It was mitigations in Smite 1, but I think it's just protections in Smite 2. But yeah, you're going to be permanently getting those effects if you're low health now, which is pretty powerful, especially combined with the Berserker Shield buffs from this patch as well. Amanita Charm, they have given it 100 more health, which is an interesting change. I feel like Amanita Charm is picked up pretty frequently by supports. Like my general go-to build for a lot of supports is Beads active into Amanita Charm. Relatively popular in pro play as well, or at least it was. Maybe it's fallen off in pro play. Maybe that's why they're giving it a buff. But yeah, 100 extra health for this is going to be really useful for supports. I was kind of already building this item anyway, to be honest. So yeah, going to make supports just a little bit more tanky in the early game if they do want to go for an Amanita Charm rush. And finally, Prophetic Cloak, they have removed the health from the item, but added 20 cooldown rate. And I feel like that's definitely a change in the item's favor. They have reduced the base procs by 5 of each, but increased the max stacks by 5. So the total amount of protections is going to remain the same, but you're going to have to work a little bit harder to get the max stacks and get that mitigation online for Prophetic Cloak. But yeah, they've also removed the like 150 or 250, however much health this item had, and added 20 cooldown rate, which I think is definitely a change in the item's favor. It's very hard to get cooldown rate early on in support builds in Smite 2. It feels like, you know, you're often rushing stuff like the Beads active, or you're rushing Amanita Charm, or both, or whatever. And unless you want to go into stuff like a Breastplate or a Genji's, like a little bit more selfish, maybe even a Chronos Pendant or something like that, it can kind of be hard to pick up cooldown rate in support builds. So this is definitely going to be really attractive on Prophetic Cloak now as a rush. One of the few like good support items you can rush that actually has cooldown rate. So will definitely probably more attractive to supports. But yeah, that is the 4th of November patch that released yesterday. We've covered both of them now. I just thought I would keep you guys posted on these. I know a lot of people do watch my channel like pretty much exclusively in terms of their updates for Smite 2. And you may not have seen these because I haven't been covering them. As I said, I've been on vacation over the weekend from Friday till Monday, so I haven't had a chance to cover these. But I thought I would still keep you guys posted. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on these patches down below, and I will catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.